Okay, I've had several people ask about making the daisy chain out of the Amsteel, so I'm going to put together a little video here. I didn't know how to do this before I made my Amsteel ropes for my sticks either, so I just learned how to do this. But it's pretty simple. And I've got some Amsteel here, some 7/64 Amsteel. This is a pretty long piece. I'm actually not going to really end up making anything out of it here. I'll just show you how to do it, and then I'll undo the knots so I can save the rope for a project later. But you're going to want, for instance, if you're going to make a 6-foot rope for your sticks, you're going to want about twice of that in length of your rope because it doubles itself up. And then you want to probably leave an extra foot, 8 inches at least, so that you can make a nice buried end on the finished end. And so what you do is you double it up like this first. As you can see, this one's pretty long. It's probably 7, 14, 15 and a half feet. First thing I'm going to do, well, before I do that, let me explain these fids. You're going to need some kind of a fid for making your splices, so the end of your rope can go inside these fids. Now, what these fids are, I made these out of, there's some kind of book binding pieces. This one, I have it glued together so it won't come apart, screwed on. But they're about this long. You can get them at your, like Menards or Lowe's or something like that. They're about this long, and they're for putting through when you have big stacks of paper. You stick them through the hole, and it has a flat, like a big nail head on one end. And then the screw part on the other end has a big nail head on it too. So you put it through there and you screw the other one in from the other side, and it holds your bindings of paper together. That's what they're made for. I don't know what they're called. Somebody on Saddle Hunter had suggested that as a thing you might make a fid from. So I made a couple. The problem is you have to grind them down, make yourself a point, but you don't want your point to be too sharp because it catches on everything. And then you need to kind of smooth this off with some emery paper or something, because otherwise it wants to bind a lot going through on the fibers of the rope. Somebody suggested that I go to Walmart and get a purple knitting needle there, and they said that's about the right size for this 7/64 Amsteel. I also use this for paracord if I'm doing some bracelets or things like that with paracord. The inside of this has the threads where the other end screws on, and that's kind of handy for when you're putting this on the rope. You just kind of stick it in there, and then you just kind of turn it, and it kind of screws the rope right in there. So it doesn't hold it tight enough that you can't pull it out, but it holds it tight enough that it doesn't slip out easily. And I have 2 of them, so I can keep one on each end, because otherwise, when you're doing these daisy chains, you're constantly needing to slip the other end through. So it's nice if you have 2 of them, that you're not constantly having to take it off, put it back on, take it off, put it back on. So I'm going to screw these both on. Okay, so now my rope is ready to go. Okay, pretty even. So here's my end. I'm going to make this first one just big enough to go over my homemade Versa button so that it doesn't slip off accidentally, but I can still take it off if I want to. So it's going to be about that big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one side, and when you're first getting started, you have to make sure you keep your 2 sides separated. This hollow braided rope, you can just kind of push them together and see it creates this bunch of holes, and you can just push that fid through one of those holes. If you go straight through, you'll find the other side, and it's pretty even. You have the same number of strands on one side as the other, and you just push that through, and you bring your rope all the way through until you have a loop like this. Now that loop isn't locked, obviously, so I can still change the size of it. I'm going to just kind of bring it down so it's about the size of my Versa button. Just about like that. Doesn't need to be any looser than that. Okay, now to lock that in then, I went from this side through this rope. Now I'm going to have to take this side and go through the other rope. It's basically like working with 2 ropes, even though it's one continuous loop. So I'm just going to slide this up out of the way, and I'm going to scrunch this down again. And when I scrunch that down, it gives me, I'm shaky, but it gives me that hole to go through again. And so I pull this through, and now that baby is locked. Now some guys are doing this and doing a third splice where you take this and you take the other side and you go through again. And you can do that. It just kind of takes up more room. They say it'll lock it in more, but this, as you can see, is not going to go anywhere. You can't move this lock. So that goes on over my Versa button now. I'm just going to do that. And then I'm going to come out about 18 inches to 2 feet. There's no science to it. I just know that I'm not going to be around a tree that's this small. And if I do, I'll wrap the cord around 2 or 3 times. So there's no need of putting in a whole bunch of locks or loops that close. There's no need of putting in a bunch of loops here. It's just a lot of extra work. If you want to put a loop here and a loop here just to kind of keep the strings together, you can do that. But I don't bother with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this rope, is going to go through, is going to splice through the other side. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to do this again. And it helps if you're kind of on something so you can kind of keep it pushed against the table. And I'm going to just find a hole. And I'm a little bit blind. But once you get that started, then it goes through. You straighten them out. I'm going to lay that side down. And now I'm going to go through the other side. The rope that just came through, this one, is all here. It's hard to see because it's one big piece. But I'm just going to stick it, and it's going to go through this other side now. Nope, I had that wrong. We just went from this one through this one, so now we're going to put this one through that one. Yeah, I had it right. Okay, here we go. So I just moved that other one out of the way just a little bit. And it helps if you kind of can do something like this. Usually I do this sitting down, so I'm resting it against my leg. And that way, when I get my rope opened, I can use my leg to push my finger against. Okay. So anyway, so that's our first, basically that's our first loop. And it's a big long loop. So now I'm going to make my loops big enough again to go over here. Okay. And I just know by looking at it about how big I want them to be. So I'm just going to do this here. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to take my other side. I'm going to push these together. Push them together like that. And I'm going to find the hole. Try to go straight through to the hole on the other side. So you have equal number of strands on each side of the fid. I'm going to pull that through. And there's my first splice on that one. And now, since this rope went through this rope, now we're going to take this rope and go through, this rope and go through that rope now. So you just do it the opposite of what you just did. Does that make sense? My daughter's looking at me like, okay, Dad. Okay, so I'm going to push this back a little bit I can see where I need to go through, so I'm going to push this together and I'm going to go through here. Okay, so I'm going through. And you'll know if you didn't do it right because it won't lock up. But there we go. There's our next. So there's our next loop. So when I go around the tree, I can hook it back into this again. And it's snug. Okay. So let's do one more loop for you. So we're going to do one more. You got to keep your strings kind of separated here. Okay, so I'm going to go. And I don't think it matters which one you start with. So I'm going to do one here. We're going to go from this side through that side. And then I'm going to lay this one all down, and I'm going to take the other one, and we're going to go from this side. Pull on this. Usually I try to keep a little bit of tension on it so I can keep them all straightened out. And I'm going to go from there through here then. So I'm going to back that out of the way, make a little opening. And right through there. Okay. Did I do something wrong? Oh, I got my cord. I just got this. I got this in the way. Okay. There's my lock. There we go. I just had too much rope getting in the way. That's why I try to keep this where you can keep it all straight, and then you just kind of back up as you go. I'll do one more just because that one looked confusing probably. I've got two sides. So this side's going to go through the other rope. Come up close, honey. Right through here. And you can make these bigger or smaller. You can count the number of strands if you want to figure out how big your loop is. I just am not that scientific about it. So that one went through that side. Now we'll put that rope out of the way. And now this rope, you can kind of snug them down. Okay, and see where the other rope has to go through now. It has to go through right about here. You want to keep it kind of close so that your splices don't get sloppy, but they don't have to be exactly where the other rope touches, where the other splice touches. You pull on it, pull on them. Now that's a good, it's nice and even, and it's not going to come apart. You can't get those to come apart. So when you get to the end, you're going to do the same thing, but what you're going to do is your last rope that was spliced through, this one was spliced through last. This one came through. So then you're going to take this one and you're going to use the same method, but instead of coming through the rope, you're going to go down the middle of it. And this is a little trickier. This is why you want to make sure you leave enough rope too, because if you don't have enough rope, you're going to end up with a little stub of rope like this. You won't be able to get your fid back far enough to go through. And you're just gonna fish that down through there, through the middle, and it's a little tricky to do. There it's starting. And once you get it to go so far, what I do is I take one of these scissors. These, not really a scissors, but it's a clamp, surgical clamp. My wife just picked this up at work. She's a nurse. And once this fid comes through, and this rope's probably cut off about here. Once the fid comes through the end, what I do is I just put this inside the rope and I just push that fid back out. And this clamp ends up sticking out the other side. And then I can clamp a hold of the rope with that and pull it through. I just find that's easier to do than trying to get the fid through. This fid gets a little wide up here, and to go through the rope is a lot harder than to just to crisscross the rope, to go across it sideways. So that's it. I hope that's clear as mud. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.